Well, the Switch 2 is now officially out in the wild, and with me quitting my job to focus on YouTube, I'm sure as hell not getting one. Have you seen how much it costs? But this isn't another video complaining about the price tag or its lack of originality in its design. It isn't even about the Switch 2 at all. What I'm actually here to talk about is my favorite game consoles. AKA Gray convincing himself he doesn't need a Switch 2. You know you're finally a real YouTuber when you're making a random, entirely subjective top 5 list. What's this? No Nintendo 64? No PlayStation? Starting things off with a hot take for those clicks? Well, I do need the clicks, but... Look, when I was little, we had this hand-me-down Super NES for my cousin, and I was so young that I couldn't do much more than run around the level pretending I knew how to play it. But then the very 90s ads for Sega Saturn hit our TV, and I wanted one. Bad. So when I was 7, I did all the extra chores I could, saved my money, and after months of hard work, I finally bought my very first console that was fully mine. At least, that's how I remembered it. In my early 20s, I brought this story up at a family gathering, and my dear sweet mother made it clear that I'd actually saved my allowance until I had like $30, and my parents said, close enough, and went and bought me one. That's why it's only number 5. Even just the bundled games of Virtua Fighter 2 and were enough to sell me on the system. But then, for my 8th birthday, not only did I get the best Saturn game ever made, but I got to plug my console into my dad's big screen Super Bowl TV and use my cousin's light guns to play Virtua Cop, just like in a real arcade. I was the coolest kid for like a day. Side note to my younger viewers, an arcade was a place where you went to play video games with your friends. Think of it like your Fortnite lobbies, only you're there in person. And it's loud, and it costs money, and it was really cool. You had to be there. As an adult, one of the first things I wanted to do was rebuild my Saturn collection and play some of the games I'd always wanted to when I was younger, but couldn't, because I didn't have a job. Gyms like Panzer Dragoon, Burning Rangers, Fighters Megamix, and Shining Force were all now at my fingertips. Magic Knight Rayearth is a game that will never happen like that again, and Panzer Dragoon Saga is the best RPG of its generation. Fight me. Remake Panzer Dragoon Sega Saga. Remake Panzer Dragoon remake. It, you know what I mean. The year was 2001, and there was no Space Odyssey. But I was obsessed with Smash Brothers. There wasn't anything I wanted more than and I took every opportunity possible to tell my parents this. I'd even walk to the Gamecube section of Hollywood Video and just look at the Melee box, flip through its manual, and just wish that I had it. Hey, younger viewers again, Hollywood Video was a place where you could rent a physical game, take it home, then forget to bring it back on time so you owe them even more money. My parents got the hint because on Christmas morning, I was the N64 kid incarnate. I'd gotten my Gamecube, and then I wore through 5 controllers by playing Smash for the entire Bush administration. The Gamecube was a quirky little console, visually designed to appeal to kids while also trying to win back the hardcore audience from Sony and Xbox. Really a stark contrast when playing Resident Evil, then turning the lights back on and seeing my purple little lunchbox sitting on the carpet. Like, you did that, little guy? Speaking of Resident Evil, the Gamecube is what got me into horror as a genre, so it's a big reason why I love the console. The remake of Resident Evil 1 is one of my favorite games of all time, and Eternal Darkness is still, to this day, probably the best psychological horror game ever made. Sorry, Silent Hill 2. One of my favorite things about the Gamecube was its controller. They apparently took the criticisms of the N64 controller to heart because this thing just melts into your hands like butter. There's a reason why they're still making them for Switch too. I was in love with my Gamecube. Yeah, the mean kids would call it a lame cube. But anytime I wasn't playing Melee, I had a whole catalog of Nintendo in their prime. Super Mario Strikers, Mario Kart Double Dash, Zelda Twilight Princess, and even Star Fox Adventures. What? I like Star Fox Adventures. What? So, when I thought that I'd bought the Saturn by myself, that was actually the Dreamcast. It dropped to a stupidly low $99, and my grandpa took me to GameStop to get one, as well as an old TV from the 70s in my great-grandma's garage. That's how I experienced Sonic Adventure for the first time, with like 6 colors and speakers that made the butt rock even crunchier. And I loved it. I had video games in my bedroom for the first time, and now that I think about it, I shared the room with Blue at the time. I think I'm to blame for his Sonic obsession. Huh. The Dreamcast is such a weird console, and I think that's why I love it so much. It has its virtual memory units that display little calculator-like images in this little window on your controller, and then you can take them around elsewhere and play them like a Tamagotchi. There was also a disturbing game Seaman, where you talk to fish with human faces.
You humans are going to get lazier and less mobile, and forget how to deal with each other face to face. I think things could get pretty ugly a few decades down the road. Do you think the internet is dangerous?
And the equally disturbing Echo the Dolphin, which gave me an irrational fear of killer whales for the rest of my life. Jet Grind Radio was the coolest thing 12-year-old me had ever seen. Shenmue made me feel like I was playing a movie instead of a game. And Phantasy Star Online was a game you played online. Blew my mind that I could play with my friend who lived across town. Of course, we'd have to stop playing when Dad made a phone call, but you know how it is with dial-up internet. Younger viewers, I'm not gonna keep doing this. Google it. This was also when I started to get into fighting games that didn't have Link in them, like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Street Fighter Alpha 3, Power Stone, and Dead or Alive, which I totally played for the fighting game mechanics, and nothing else. Look, I was 13. What's interesting is, I have really fond memories of this game Time Stalkers, and one time some friends were reminiscing about the Dreamcast and we all started sharing our favorite games. So I was like, yeah, and remember Time Stalkers? And I swear I got this look. It was a fun game! It's no Star Fox Adventures, but... So, to you PlayStation heads watching this, we never had one in our house growing up. And even though all the cool kids had PlayStations, seeing Gears of War on an HD TV when I was 17 was mind-blowing. We spent whole Saturday nights turned Sunday mornings playing Halo 3 in my friend's basement with TVs lined up around an old pool table. The 360 gave me Mass Effect. It gave me BioShock, and Street Fighter 4, and Batman Arkham City. One of the coolest things about the 360 era was the Xbox Live Arcade titles. Having the option of smaller, cheaper games downloaded right to your hard drive was brand new. And it made me appreciate smaller, more unique titles like Explosion Man, Shadow Complex, Bionic Commando Rearmed, and Amy. Amy? Huh. I forgot I bought Amy. I think that alone is what keeps the 360 from being number one. I have never been more miserable playing a game. F*** Amy. What's weird about the 360 and PS3 generation is that it almost feels like 2 generations in one. The Xbox 360 that I'm fond of is the slim version, the one I bought in 2010 and still have hooked up in my bedroom to this day. It's so different from the original model that it almost doesn't feel like the same console. Games like Destiny push the hardware well past what we originally thought it was capable of, and launch games like Dead Rising. The Walking Dead and Life is Strange introduced the concept of episodic games where we could play and discuss between chapters like a hit TV show. And also, the Kinect was a thing. I don't know, I tried it for a bit, but it was basically how I turned on YouTube without picking up a controller. That thing was goofy. DLC and post-launch content suddenly extended the lives of the games we liked. Before we were cursed with the games as a service model we have today, it was a more innocent time, where additional content was reasonably priced and enhanced a game you already loved. Then they went and f***ed it up. Mass Effect 3, for example, launched with one of the worst endings to a series I can think of. Well...
Bullshit. That's not what really happened.
But they amended the ending best they could with a major 4GB update, added my single favorite DLC ever in Citadel, and supported its surprisingly amazing multiplayer mode with a year's worth of new maps, objectives, weapons, and characters. This was the future, and I was living in it. But the Xbox 360 is also home to my favorite game of all time, Dragon Age 2. Be sure to tell me in the comments just how wrong my choice of favorite game is. I'm used to it. So you might have expected the Switch 1 to be here, given the start of the video, but honestly, the Switch never quite captured my imagination the way other Nintendo consoles did. I never really take it out of its dock, so its portability isn't really a feature for me, and it lacks those sort of quirky and weird games that I remember Nintendo so fondly for. You know what the 3DS doesn't lack? Tomodachi Life, Dylan's Rolling Western, Attack of the Friday Monsters, Metroid Prime, Federation Forces Blast Ball. Look, just because the title is misleading doesn't mean the minigames aren't fun. Whereas I'm too scared to bring my Switch anywhere with its big breakable screen, I can clap my 3DS shut, shove it in my pocket, and walk around with it all day. Which I did. A lot. Anytime we'd go somewhere, I'd bring it along and come back with my Max Play coins and so many new Street Pass hookups. Features like these and the AR cards just felt distinctly Nintendo at a time when Sony and Microsoft were becoming mirrors of each other. It gives that little clamshell machine a charm that you just can't deny. One time, Blue and I went to the theater early for a midnight premiere of Resurrection F, and decided to pass the time by playing some Smash. But when we tried to make a lobby, we realized someone else in the audience had already made one. So we joined, and had a bunch of 4-player matches with total strangers sitting somewhere behind us. Never found out who they were. But one of them played a mean Dark Pit. What makes me so fond of my 3DS is how often it just became a part of my day-to-day. In college, I could sit on the couch while my roommates talked and play some Mercenaries. Just like upstairs. Waiting for my car to get fixed, I could race a few tracks on Mario Kart. Just like at home. Hell, I even had this part-time job as mayor in Animal Crossing New Leaf. Oh no, Isabel, I'm so sorry. I'll pull those weeds soon, I promise. The 3DS gave me AAA experiences that still felt uniquely built for the hardware. Resident Evil Revelations felt like playing a true Resident Evil game, but chopped up into shorter segments for playing on the go, something that definitely felt jarring when ported back to home consoles. Super Mario 3D Land really took advantage of the glasses-free 3D for unique level design and objectives, something that was never truly replicated in its Wii U sequel. Kind of a running theme. The 3DS also has 3 fantastic Fire Emblem games. Or 5? Fates is weird. Oh, wait, but there's also Warriors and Sacred Stones. Man, the 3DS just has so many games. A Link Between Worlds would be my favorite Zelda if Twilight Princess didn't exist. And Moon was my favorite Pokemon, until Legends Arceus used Judgment on the franchise's tropes. Nebby, get in the fucking bag. And we may never see something like Project Cross Zone again. Honestly, those games feel like a fever dream when you look at them now. What other game gives you Sagata Sanshiro talking with Cosmos and Fiora? But yeah, my 3DS is still my favorite console of all time. Could the Switch 2 usurp its position and steal the throne? We may never know, because I can't justify spending that much money on a Switch but better. Though Donkey Kong Bonanza does look amazing, so I might be tempted. I mean, it's no Star Fox Adventures, but